The Series S has been a very sticky point when it comes to gaming and basically the idea of like how games should run and what the actual device should be capable of. Well, there have been, of course, reasons that, like games in the past, for example, when it comes to stuff like Baldur's Gate 3 not shipping with split screen on the Series S, but being playable on the Series X, and basically the reason why Baldur's Gate 3 didn't come to Xbox during launch, but rather had been pushed back because the devs just weren't happy with the performance. Or the fact that the developers of Gotham Knights called the Series S a potato, basically, even though they weren't making a particularly good game to begin with, but hey, we can kind of throw shots across the board. And now, Battlefield 6 devs are struggling to get it running on Series S. EA won't say anything about whether the upcoming and highly optimized shooter is coming to Switch 2. Which is interesting because if it can't run on Series S, then Switch 2 I feel like is completely out of the question, even if somehow Nintendo does have some level of auto upscaling technology that's going to be able to allow them to actually, use it basically like that, to make the game run a little bit better or a little bit more functionally. But yeah, Battlefield 6's open beta on PC and consoles quickly became one of the most played games of 2025, and of course, because it's freely available, why the hell would people not want to jump in? But like any modern game hitting Xbox in 2025, Battlefield 6 is launching on both Series X and the weaker Series S, and according to devs behind the game BF6, to run on the less powerful console was a challenge. And I feel like we should take that statement not with a grain of salt, but everything that it's absolutely worth, because I feel like there is so much undertone in just the word challenge by itself. Earlier this week, Kotaku sat down with two Battlefield 6 devs, so this is basically because I'm reading this on Kotaku basically, to discuss the game's console ports and ask the team if they struggled to get such a big and complicated game running well on Series S. And of course, we know for a fact that games like Black Myth Wukong was also delayed because it wasn't running particularly well on the Series S. Though that being said, that game didn't run particularly well at launch on, I think, all of the platforms it released on. But in saying that, it did get significantly better over time. But the thing is that the game was already released so that they could further improve it later on down the line. The thing is that Xbox never got the game to begin with, and because of Microsoft, or rather Xbox, wanting to parity across both platforms, the idea that you cannot ship a game with functionality that works better on one platform over the other, so like making the Series X look better than the Series S, because a vast majority of the consumers that bought an Xbox, more than 60%, were on the Series S, which is absolutely shocking to think about, because when you give people a significantly more expensive option and a much cheaper option, people are going to actually go for the cheaper option rather than the more expensive one, even if it's at the detriment of what the future is going to bring when it comes to something like gaming, which ultimately does improve on a curve, so to speak. So it's worth keeping that in mind. And yeah, Frostbite obviously not a great engine for building shooters on, all things considered. But yeah, so the Series S was still proven a tricky beast to conquer. So what they said was, I will say the biggest thing we did that was a challenge for us was dealing with the console's limited memory, explained Christian Bull, technical director on Battlefield 6. Xbox Series S does have less memory than even our mid-spec PC, and so there was a point, I want to say like 6 to 12 months ago, we were kind of realized that a lot of our levels were crashing on Xbox Series S. As a result, the team focused on optimizing memory usage in Battlefield 6, and these improvements weren't just felt on Series S, according to Bull. This process made the whole game better and more stable. However, the devs also worked on specific optimizations for Series S too. Now, this is actually a very good point I don't think a lot of people talk about. While Series S is a potato, if people are able to conquer the potato that is the Series S, ultimately it'll make for a significantly better running game on every other platform that the game is going to release on. So to some extent, there is actually some positives to trying to basically complete the challenge of actually making the game run well on a device that is more lower spec than mid-spec PCs essentially. So there is some positivity around that. So I did not think I was going to talk positively about Xbox, but that's a very backhanded compliment given that every other platform on the face of the earth is going to benefit from the failure that Series X is bringing forward with us. But of course, specific optimizations for Series S, of course, is also a bit eyebrow raising in its own capacity as well. We're doing so much testing. We were collecting all this data, explained Bull. Once we kind of started running all our levels through it and were able to see where the problems were, after a month or two, we kind of resolved all of our memory issues on the Series S. Bull said the Battlefield 6 is now super solid and performant on Series S and will run at a smooth 60 frames per second, and footage of the game's open beta running on Series S seems to back that up. Now, whether or not the game's going to come out on Switch, that's a completely separate point entirely. Of course, with Frostbite being so scalable, the studio is working hard to make Battlefield 6 super optimized, but of course it needs to be if it's going to run particularly well, because optimization and working well go hand in hand basically. Ooh, and they're implementing gyro controls on PS5 and PS5 Pro. That's interesting. Huh. Okay, that's cool. Yeah, okay, so it looks like there's not much else being talked about in this. So I do really think that it's pretty obvious that the developers did have a tough time with the Series S, and while it's unfortunate to hear that once again with another game that's coming up, I mean, we'll have to kind of wait and see and make like they say it's going to run really well, and it seems like it is running really well as per the beta. Hopefully it continues to run well into the future, and of course when they make more updates, add more maps, that it doesn't blow out the requirements, or rather the memory that the Series S is completely limited to. But I really do think that the devs of Battlefield 6 do have some good heads on their shoulders and are going to be able to take on that challenge, I think, quite well. So honestly, reading this and thinking about it now, I feel like we should be more excited about Battlefield 6 than we already are. Because like I said, if they've been able to overcome the challenge of running the game on a Series S and actually have a smooth 60 going, then that really goes to show that people are putting their effort and worth behind developing this product. And I really do think that that's something worth commending and also something worth supporting the game behind. But those are just kind of my thoughts on it. Let me know what you guys think. Do you guys think that Xbox should completely drop the ball with Series S and just sell Series X's? Because it seems to be a sticking point for a lot of places, a lot of development studios. Or do you think they're just going to rush into the next gen and hope that people leave the Series S behind? Because part of the reason why Series S is dragging the whole generation behind it due to its lackluster memory is because Xbox is like, oh, you have to develop for both X and S. You cannot develop for one or the other. And that's been a reason why people have been, or rather developers have been skipping the Xbox consoles as a platform to release on. And that's why sometimes they only say, oh, we're only releasing on PlayStation, Switch, and PC, for example. A lot of games do tend to fall in that umbrella as well. That being said though, let me know what you guys think about all this in the comments below. Like the video if you liked it, subscribe to the channel, I mean before 500 subs by the end of the year. With all that being said, I do upload every day, so I'll see you guys tomorrow.